That was a good one. That was a full send right there, you can tell. Oh yeah, there she is. There's the end of my shaft. Just a tip. Learn new things every day. I do. Power Ranger. Here's some leather seats I saved out of a Ford Fusion 500. They're pretty fancy. Pretty fancy. There's some broken glass on there. The car was literally like in the scrap pile, just waiting to be scrapped, so had to save them. I think they're a little bit too nice for scrap. Yeah, they have an airbag built in, but we don't need airbags because we die like men. But those are pretty nice seats. The other seat like folds up or folds down. I don't know, that's pretty cool. Lays right down flat. Well, my duty for the day is I gotta remove the steering column from this Dodge truck, and I've already went ahead and done part of it. Aim it down a little bit for you. There's a filler plate under here, and there's two screws at the very bottom, and the whole thing just pops out. And then there's a steel plate here. There's a steel plate that goes under the column, probably for safety reasons, I imagine. And that's 4 screws, 7mm self-tapping screws. So I got that out of the way. I'm just letting it hang on the hood cable because the hood cable is screwed to this steel plate. So I'm just letting it hang there, and the OBD2 plug is also attached there. But this gives me enough room to access what I need here just by taking off those 2 plates. And then the shifter cable is right here. It's the shifter cable. So you can see a little loop right here, and the shifter cable goes through this loop, and you just squeeze 2 tabs where it goes through the loop. You just squeeze 2 tabs, and on the other end it just pops off. There's like a plastic grommet that just pops on and off. So that's pretty easy. And there's 2 nuts, 2 13mm nuts at the front, and there's 2 13mm nuts further back. The front ones go in through an aluminum housing or some type of die cast white metal, and the back ones, they go through a steel bracket. So I've got 3 of those out, and that's why the column is all loose there. So there's going to be a few wires. Some of them are underneath of this shroud here, so you might have to take that shroud off and unplug the wires safely. I'm in the junkyard, so I'm just going to cut them as long as I know that I'm cutting on the right side of the plug, so I can unplug them later. But most of the stuff is just going to unplug. I think there's 1 or 2 that I can't get at behind this cover here. You can use a Torx screwdriver and undo the cover, and then you can access that stuff. So I'm not going to do anything that's unnecessary. I don't need to take this cover off because I can access the wires here. I can just cut them. Now if you're replacing a column in a truck, you can't do that. You have to take the cover off. But in my case, I'm doing I'm just doing a quick job in the junkyard and I'm just going to get it out. I'm not going to damage the column at all. You'll still be able to unplug it and you'll still be able to plug it in. But I got one bolt left holding it in there, I do believe. And there's one bolt that goes, there's a U-joint way down by the floor, way further down there. There's one bolt that goes through the steering shaft U-joint. So you have to have the steering shaft disconnected there. And even if you take that bolt out, it might be stuck in there. So sometimes you have to spread the coupler or give it a good yank, maybe tap it with a hammer. Man, some of these bolts are a mile long, I swear. There we go. Okay, so I got it all unbolted. I got the steering shaft unbolted. I can see a plug in here. It looks like it's actually for the brake switch. So the brake switch might just pull, it might just disconnect. But I'll see if I can unplug it. Oh my goodness. Those little red locking tabs, they have to come out first, and this one just doesn't want to come out apparently. Maybe I can persuade it with my persuader. Ta-da! Buck knife. Buck knife for the win. Buck. Alright, got that unplugged. There's like a brake switch here. This brake switch has this red lock. The red lock has to come off first. And then you can push the other locking tab on this one to get it undogged. There's going to be one more good harness here. So you have to, you can't unplug it up here. You have to unplug it behind this shroud. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to cut the wires because we're in the junkyard and this truck is smashed. It's never going to be repaired again. The frame is bent. So I'm going to cut that there. And yeah, instead of taking all the shroud off and unplugging everything. But that would be the way to do it. Is if you're working on a truck, you take this shroud off. There's torque screws underneath. And I think the bottom and top separate two pieces, and then you can unplug the signal switch and the ignition switch and the clock spring. There's probably several plugs under here, but I'm just going to cut that one there. Unplugged everything that I could. That brake switch could be actually separated from the column, like it's just pressed into a hole there, so that could be popped out. That's a completely separate part, but it's attached for some reason. And there's a coupler back there on the U-joint. I've already got it unbolted. Sorry for the bad lighting back there, but it's deep in the abyss. So it should pull off there now. I got the bolt off the coupler. Some people really don't like it when you cut wires. And you can't blame them. You can't really blame them. Some vehicles are repairable, some wire harnesses are sellable, or yeah, some wire harnesses you can resell. But this truck is completely totaled. There's another one here if you happen to want a wiring harness for some reason. This isn't the only one, so I'm not wrecking the only wiring harness in Canada. Yeah, so I think the wiring's all undone. Oh yeah, there she is. There's the end of my shaft, just a tip. So that's the end of the steering shaft there. Yeah. Oh, Remember how I said the brake switch is separate? Well, there it is. Do not reinstall. Huh. Learn new things every day. I do. Do not reinstall. Why is that, I wonder? So I'm able to see down in here that there's two plugs. There's one plug right there. She's dirty. I think that's the neutral switch. And there's another plug there, but yeah, underneath of that shroud you can unplug the harness if you want. And that's probably the best way to do it. So there she is. That's what she looks like there. And it's got all the cruise control and radio controls and tilt and all that good stuff built in. Fancy key. This is where your shift cable connects to this little ball here, and this is the housing keeper for the cable housing. And there's 2 bolts at the back and 2 at the front. And yeah. Oh my goodness. That was a good one. That was a full send right there, you can tell. You can tell that was a full send, that one. Power Ranger. Document the process and bring you along. So I gotta get this steering column out. So I took off this filler plate down below here, and there's a steel bar that goes across. So I removed that. I think there's enough room here now. There's a shifter cable right there, and there's a bracket here. You can squeeze the 2 tabs and the shift cable will come off here, and it should just pop off up above on the point where it connects to the shifter. This is just a cable bracket here. Then there's some wires, so I'll have to figure out where they come undone. And there's going to be 2 bolts up top here. There's one there. They're actually nuts rather than bolts. 2 there, and 2 more further down. Yeah, there's 2 more further down there, 1 on each side. And luckily the joint here, the bolt is pointing down, so it's going to be easy to get at there and disconnect it. So basically you just got your shifter cable, your mounting nuts, mounting hardware, and wires. So I'm gonna start unbolting it, so make it a little bit easier to get at the wires. And I'll pop the shifter cable off. Okay, I've made some progress here. I've got 3 bolts out, or 3 nuts I should say, that hold the column in. So there's 4. I got the 2 at the back out, and I got 1 at the front. So this is the last one here holding it, and I got this one loose. So the steering column is loose because I got 3 out. This one's loose. This is the shifter cable here. It just pops on to the knob on the shifter up here, and there's 2 tabs here that you squeeze together, and it pops out of this bracket. So I got the shifter off. I got bolts out. I got the 1 bolt out of the shaft connector down there, the shaft coupler. So I got that undone. and there's gonna be some wires here, and there's a clip right here, so I should be able to unplug the wires right here. I think I'm just gonna drop it down. I've got the shifter undone, I've got the steering coupler undone. I think she's ready to come down. This truck has some extra stuff going on here. It has like a, I don't know, remote starter kit or a security alarm or something going on down there, but it should unplug just the same. I'll have to see what's going on here. Sometimes you have to take this shroud off to unplug like the signal switch or whatever, so I'll see when I drop it down. Okay, there she is. I tried to unplug as much as I could. This one was interesting. It's got a red lock on this side, so you got to unlock it, and it's got a tab on this side also. And then on the other side, it's got this weird plastic thing that you have to push out. So that was interesting. So that went to this here, and it took me a minute to figure that out. And there's another one. That's the shifter point there. It just pops off, so that was pretty easy. This thing here, I'm not really sure, but it just unplugs. There's two more plugs under this cover here. Here's one. It unplugs under here, and there's another one under here. But I don't have the Torx screwdriver to take this off, so I'm in the junkyard, so I just cut this. But obviously you won't be able to cut that if you're doing this, so you have to take those Torx screws out, pop this cover off, and there's a plug-in in there for this one, and there's a plug-in, as one of them goes to the signal switch, I'm pretty sure, here, and I think the other one is for the airbag and radio controls. This one has the radio controls on the steering wheel and all that fancy stuff. I think it's cruise control and all the buttons on the wheel. So yeah, aside from those two there under the cover, there's two bolts at the front, two bolts at the back. There's your steering shaft coupler there, that's only one bolt. Shifter cable that just snaps off. You don't even really need tools for that, but the only thing I used was a 13mm for the bolts and a 7mm to get the cover off underneath, and a handful of just a screwdriver for popping clips and wires off. And if you're gonna get under here, you'll need a Torx, but aside from that, pretty straightforward.